the company that I run now, and the startup that I've just launched, is around teaching kids entrepreneurship from 7 years old to 18. And we do that by providing one-to-one tuition. We run lots of, now we do lots of Zoom calls. We run programs in the community. We also work with schools, so we go into schools and do programs. And we work with cohorts of young people that come through local authorities, housing associations, and so on. But in that, we have used entrepreneurship as a way to practically get kids to start a business. So it's not chalk and talk. It's not let's look at all of the theory around it. It's if you want to start up a YouTube channel, let's record your first video right now, right? If you want to start up a t-shirt business, let's draw a logo on a Primark t-shirt and try and sell it to your mum. If you want to write a book, let's write the first chapter right now, and take them through a very practical step-by-step journey, because that's where all the learning is. And kids find that really exciting. Kids love creating things. They love making and expressing themselves. So we've been really successful in that regard. And currently, in the last 6 months, we've launched a tech startup in which we're using a chat-based app to teach entrepreneurship to kids. And the need from that grew from the challenge we had in running face-to-face programs by not being able to meet demand. So at least once a week, I get a call from a parent or a teacher from another country around in the world, or we'll have someone in Brighton, Inverness, Wales, who just physically can't get to our courses. And so we developed this app so that, anytime, anywhere, young people, parents and teachers can have access to our entrepreneurial curriculum. The challenge was around scale, actually, but if you do something, you want to do more of it, right? And because the tuition company, so Ultra Education, because it's really a social impact organization, it's a social enterprise, whereas Ask Ultra is a for-profit organization. The mission in Ultra Education is to make sure that the most disadvantaged young people have access to entrepreneurship as a vehicle. And so, a lot of that requires us fundraising and applying for grants and things like that. But because we also have a hybrid model where we charge schools and parents will pay for tuition and things, it means that we can have an ongoing, our programs are ongoing. They don't necessarily start and stop. Parents and teachers and kids have access to our learning, the experiences we do, the workshops we do online or offline, the visits we do. We've done visits to Oxford University's Innovation Unit, to Microsoft, to LinkedIn, and so on. So there's an ecosystem that we've built because, an entrepreneur isn't built in 16 weeks or in, a weekend. It's built over time. So we provided that enabling environment so that they can grow over time and that they can, test and try out different things with the support of all of our mentors. People often say that it's difficult to work with schools, it's difficult to work with local authorities. My response to that is you've got to understand your customer. So I'd never worked with schools or local authorities before I started this company. But one of the golden rules of entrepreneurship is to know your customer. Understand what makes them tick, what keeps them awake at night. So when I started, that's exactly what I did. I learned about, what head teachers and teachers are concerned about. I learned about what, local authorities and councillors and, all of their youth provisions and all of the different departments. I learned about and just sat down and had conversations with them to find out, what are your challenges? What problems do you need solving? What are your pain points? And we aligned what we did. It wasn't difficult, but we aligned what we did to solving those problems. If you can solve a problem for a school or a council or a parent or anybody, they will pay you for it. So for me, it's been about, improving my leadership, making sure that I'm supportive of the people that are around me, making sure that I listen and take advice, making sure that I'm able to communicate what I'm doing really clearly, thinking about all of the stakeholders that I have around me and am I leveraging what I've got around me most? And at least 3/4 of the problems that I've been able to solve is because I've just taken a step back and thought about who I have immediate access to and leveraging those things more effectively. I challenge people, like the majority of problems that anybody wants to solve is within arm's reach, they just can't see it. They can't see the wood from the trees. They're too caught up in day-to-day things to take a slightly aerial view and think, oh, actually, that person has this skill set or that experience or these connections that can help me to get to the next level or to solve, the current problem that I've got. The uncomfortable truth is that when people start a new business, their audience doesn't trust them. If you start a new fashion line or you launch an app or you've done whatever, the audience is looking at you thinking, are you really authentic? How authentic are you, right? Are you going to be here today, gone tomorrow? Because nobody wants to buy a product or buy into a brand that isn't going to be around, that isn't authentic, that isn't genuine. So people naturally wait a while. They see what you're doing, and some people jump in straight away, and some people wait. And they wait on the sidelines to see whether or not, this is something that you're really going to stick with. And if it is, then they look at it with a bit more regard and they then trust it. So you've got to get people to trust what you're doing. So you either have to have previous credibility, or you've got to show people that you're here. You're here for the long term, and we will start to build people's trust. Right? We've got to be clear about what's the problem we're solving. Because if people aren't clear about the problem, they're not going to spend money on it, and if they do, they won't spend it for the long term. They'll look at that subscription or they'll look at that cost when they're looking at their budgets and think, I don't really need that anymore, right? We've all done that. We've all cancelled things that we don't really need because it doesn't really solve a problem for a long enough period of time. So, aside from being novelty purchases or purchases that people make just because they want to support you, those things aren't businesses. A business is when somebody who doesn't know you and you don't need to oversell to them will buy your stuff repeatedly. Then you've got a model in the business. But you can only do that if you're genuinely solving a problem. And the easiest way to do that isn't to go away and hide yourself in a room and cook up something. It's to speak to the audience that you think has the problem that you want to solve and almost build a product with them. And do that over time.